The United States has not decided whether to recognize the Taliban or any other entity as the government of Afghanistan or as part of such a government. All references to the pre-August 2021 government refer to the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. References to the Taliban in this report do not denote or imply that the United States recognizes the Taliban as the government of Afghanistan. Prior to August 15, 2021, the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan had a directly elected president, a legislative branch, and a judicial branch. The country last held presidential elections in September 2019, and the dispute over election results was mediated by political leaders, resulting in a compromise in which Ashraf Ghani retained the presidency. Abdullah was appointed to lead the High Council for National Reconciliation, and each of them was to select one half of the cabinet members. The Taliban, which had ruled over most parts of Afghanistan from 1996 to 2001, took control of the country again in August 2021. As of December, the group has not announced any plans to hold elections. The Taliban also declared themselves the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan and appointed dozens of so-called acting ministers who reportedly hold cabinet meetings and provide direction on various administrative activities. In October, Taliban spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid publicly indicated work would soon begin to draft a new constitution to replace the 2004 constitution. The group said it intended to eliminate secular governance and claimed to govern in accordance with their own interpretation of Sharia, Islamic law. The Taliban took expansive measures to bar women and girls from participation in public and political life, including restricting their access to education at all levels beyond primary school, employment, and freedom of movement and dress. The Taliban did not respond to repeated requests for updates and information on subjects addressed in this report. After August 15, 2021, security forces of the Islamic Republic disbanded. The Taliban oversee an armed force that reports to the Ministry of Defense. Police forces report to the Ministry of Interior. Both the so-called General Directorate of Intelligence and the so-called Ministry for the Promotion of Virtue and Prevention of Vice and Complaints oversee armed personnel who surveil the public and monitor compliance with Taliban issued edicts and directives. There is ineffective civilian oversight of these groups. The Taliban did not formally change existing laws as legislated by the Islamic Republic. However, they promulgated edicts that contradicted the laws of the Islamic Republic and international conventions and used violence to enforce their edicts. There were reports that members of the Taliban police and militia committed numerous abuses. Significant human rights issues included credible reports of arbitrary killings, including targeted killings, forced disappearance, torture, or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment by the Taliban, harsh and life-threatening prison conditions, arbitrary arrest or detention, political prisoners or detainees, arbitrary or unlawful interference with privacy, punishment of family members for alleged offenses of a relative, serious abuses in a conflict, including widespread civilian deaths or hard, enforced disappearances and abductions, torture, and unlawful recruitment and use of child soldiers, serious restrictions on freedom of expression and media by the Taliban, including arrests of and violence against journalists and censorship, serious restrictions on internet freedom, substantial interference with freedom of peaceful assembly and freedom of association, severe restrictions on religious freedom, restrictions on freedom of movement and residence and on the right to leave the country, inability of citizens to change their government peacefully through free and fair elections, serious and unreasonable restrictions on political participation, serious corruption, serious restrictions on and harassment of domestic and international human rights organizations, lack of investigation of and accountability for gender-based violence, including domestic and intimate partner violence, sexual violence, child, early, and forced marriage, and other harmful practices, substantial barriers to accessing sexual and reproductive health services, violence or threats of violence targeting members of ethnic and religious minority groups, trafficking in persons, violence against lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex persons, existence and enforcement of laws criminalizing consensual same-sex sexual conduct, severe restrictions on workers' freedom of association, and the existence of the worst forms of child labor. Widespread disregard for the rule of law and official impunity for those responsible for human rights abuses was common. After taking over the country, the Taliban formed a commission to identify and expel from their ranks people of bad character, but details of its work remained unclear. The Office of the Prosecutor for the International Criminal Court stated in September 2021 that the Taliban takeover represented a significant change of circumstances affecting the ongoing assessment of the pre-August 2021 Government's request to defer the investigation of alleged crimes against humanity and war crimes. The prosecutor's office received authorization to resume its investigation in October and stated intent to focus efforts on crimes allegedly committed by the Taliban and ISIS-K, a regional syndicate of the International Islamic State terrorist group active in South and Central Asia. The Taliban and ISIS-K reportedly engaged in child recruitment and used child soldiers younger than age 12 during the year. Armed groups threatened, rob, kidnap, and attack foreigners, medical and non-governmental organization workers, and other civilians. The Taliban reportedly engaged in targeted killings of perceived opponents and in reprisal killings. After August 2021, senior Taliban leaders announced a wide-ranging general amnesty that prohibited reprisals, including against officials and others associated with the pre-August 2021 government, for actions before the Taliban takeover. However, there were credible reports of retaliatory acts, including targeted killings and disappearances. While Taliban representatives said that they do not endorse such actions, they did not consistently take steps to hold perpetrators accountable for these abuses.